Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Atypical Security Guard. I want to thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of the Observe and Report podcast. Guys, it has been an extremely long week for your boy. I think I put in about 80 hours this week. Lots of doubles, lots of overtime. And I want to talk about why we're doing that, guys. You know, the whole point around what we're doing, right? Aside from changing the narrative around security, it's to provide for our family. I've talked to you guys so many times about the problems here in Portland, the issues that we're dealing with downtown. And I want to be really transparent and really honest. It's getting super, super bad. My feeling of security, my feelings of safety for my family downtown, it's getting really bad. We had, I think, 19 shootings over the past week. We had a guy just 2 blocks down that's dating someone that I work with that was murdered in cold blood at a pizza place.
Shattered glass covers a normally crowded sidewalk.
It was just completely out of the blue.
The owner of a sports bar riddled with bullet holes is stunned.
He was just walking by and he started shooting out of the blues. That's all we know.
Police got the call just before 2 a.m. Friday. There had been a shooting at Northwest 21st and Gleason, an area regularly buzzing with nightlife. Someone outside had fired several shots into Silver Dollar Pizza. It was packed and multiple people were hit. Police arrived to find 1 person killed and 2 more injured. They'll survive. Investigators haven't released victims' names and they haven't caught the shooter. They note they don't think this was random. The victims may have been targeted. Witnesses telling police and KGW they heard at least 10 shots. Portland's seen 923 shootings so far this year, up from less than 400 in 2019.
It's just somebody just walked right into this pizza restaurant and just opened fire. And unfortunately, this young man lost his life. So, you know, if you're down in what's called the Old Town District, which is probably one of the worst areas of Portland, that's about 7 blocks to my left. If I go outside my door right now, walk down to the edge of the block and look down, about 7 blocks to the left is the Old Town District. And that's one of the most crime-ridden, underserviced, overlooked areas here in Portland. And it's just absolutely just gone to shit. And it's unfortunate, but that's so close. If you go down the street to the right about 2 or 3 blocks, that's one of the areas that's being heavily hit right now with violence as well. So it's slowly starting to just kind of, you know, encapsulate us here and circle around us here. And I don't feel safe for my family when I'm at work. I don't feel like I ever have a moment to really relax and be peaceful. So we're doing everything that we can right now to try and get a home. We've looked in some of the areas that are on the outskirts of Portland, some of the more rural areas where the politics is a little bit more aligned with what, you know, I think is sane and safe. And hopefully in the next week or so, we'll be getting some good news and we'll be able to move out of the downtown area. Now, I enjoy working in this area. I enjoy the people that I'm able to impact and be around and the change that I can potentially bring to the area, but I don't want to live here. And more than that, I don't want to give my tax dollars to a civic leadership or a county that just is absolutely not doing their job. So enough about that. We're going to talk today about something that is also unfortunately extremely important to me, and that is active shooter response. Now, I've told you guys that I work for a company, a large conglomerate that has small subsidiaries of grocery stores. That's one of the main contracts of the company that I work for, that we service. And there have been multiple mass shootings over this past year. There was a mass shooting in Colorado. Just last week, there was a mass shooting in a grocery store in Tennessee. And so as we continue to see society just kind of devolve, one of the things as security guards that we're going to have to be really aware of and really be cognizant of is the active shooter situation. So I kind of started looking online for active shooter classes, for training in terms of response. And as you guys know, I'm all about training. I'm all about trying to educate, motivate, and inform. So I started looking into different programs in terms of active shooter response. And I come across this guy on YouTube, and his name is Ken Grommet. Ken is co-founder of Range 54. This is in Wichita, Kansas. It's a shooting range, but he has a very interesting background and take on the active shooter response. And we're going to bring him on. Let's see if he's available. So click on. Ken, are you there?
I am here.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that we were able to finally link up and get you on here and get your perspective. So listen, just kind of give everybody a brief overview of who you are, the company you work for, and what it is you do.
Okay. So my name is Ken Grommet. I started out after high school. I joined the Marine Corps, did my time in the Marine Corps. Sounds like I went to prison, but I did my time in the Marine Corps, and you can tell by the luggage under my eyes. I've been around a day or two. I spent 33 years in law enforcement, retired, and as a police officer for over 25 years. I got tired of working with victims and decided to build a facility where we could teach people not to be victims. And we've started a new program recently dealing with church security teams, and that's, I think, why you originally contacted me to kind of visit about armed personnel within churches.
Absolutely. It's interesting to me, the concept around what the biblical approach is to openness and to being accepting, and how that's going to merge with church security. So, I think I spoke with you on the phone. I told you a little bit about myself and what we're trying to do here from a security perspective. I just think that that's absolutely just intriguing. And I want to talk to you about, how you guys are able to keep that openness in a church setting where you want people to feel comfortable, moving to an area or visiting an area and coming into a church and being fed and getting the word. But at the same time, we're in a really dangerous time in our society right now. People are hurting. People are, dealing with everything from loss of jobs to, loss of family members. You've got this, this pandemic and how that's affecting people, the shutdowns, the closures. And so I see the church as being one of those, unfortunately, soft targets, much like schools and much like grocery stores. So from a security perspective, how have you guys addressed this growing threat and how that could unfortunately find its way into the church system?
Man, that's a mouthful. So back in 2007, there was a shooting in New Life Church in Colorado. And I was currently a police officer at that time and attending a church. And me and several other police officers that attended that church decided, well, we probably need to do something, And so we formed a loose-knit group of people to do security at the church when the church was in session. And, to address all of those things, biblically, and I'm not a preacher, so, if your fans beat me up, they just beat me up. If you look at David was sanctioned by God. There's no other way that David could have taken out Goliath without being sanctioned by God.
Absolutely.
And if you look at Gideon, and again, I'm not a preacher and I'm paraphrasing, but Gideon was given direction by God to choose an army of 300. And he specifically told him what type of people to look for. If they do this, don't take them. But if they do it like this, those are the people that you need to find. And so, that biblical bridge, if you will, allows us to go into the church with a little bit of understanding that it, unfortunately, these days it's necessary.
Yeah. Have you seen any sort of pushback, in terms of when you approach a group and I don't even know how you guys go about forming a security team or how this conversation even comes up. If you're within a church organization and someone brings up this topic, they say, hey, look, this is something that we need to have a conversation about and something that we need to address. How does that even how does that become a conversation where people are comfortable? Do you see any sort of pushback? I know that you're more in the Midwest, so people are a little bit more comfortable with firearms, a little bit more comfortable with preparedness. But out here where I am, specifically in Oregon, if you were to bring up having a firearm at church, or even the potential, regardless of the stuff that I talked about in the intro and how dangerous it is here in Portland, I think if you were in most churches in this area and you were to bring up the subject of church security, the possibility of needing to have firearms and have some sort of tactical training or a plan, I think that they would probably run you out of the church. It's just so counter to the politics up here. So
Well, it sounds to me like they're willing to learn the hard way rather than you know uh, you know God made us smart people. When you're on the boat, you have a lifesaver, and
yeah,
when you're in a church, having an armed security person there to protect the flock is as important as having a life preserver on a boat. Um, to do away with the stigma of armed security within our church, we just called ourselves the Guardian Ministry Team. We're a ministry team, and our goal there is to protect the flock. So as people go to church, they don't have to worry about somebody coming in.
okay,
That's what we do. Um, Having people go around the country and talk to churches about having church security teams has been around a long time. I've been to several of them by several different companies. And one of the reasons that we really started doing what we're doing is you can have a high five and handshake and say, hey, look, I'm a this or I'm a that. And so me and you, we decide we're going to be a church security team.
right,
Church buys on it, they get insurance and stuff like that. But one thing that me and you haven't done is train together. you
right.
know and that's what we're focusing on. Is lots of churches have these teams, but they're not training together. And I noticed that you went off to a company.
Absolutely.
Where was that again?
So I attended Sheepdog Response. I'm sure the people that are on this channel are tired of me dropping that name, but I attended Sheepdog Response, and the class that I went to was in Salt Lake City, Utah. And that's actually what led me to this conversation, because during that class, there were 3 guys from North Carolina. Their church had paid to send them to this training. Now, the class itself was right at $900. And that's before, your rental car, your plane ticket, your hotel, your food, and you're there for an entire week. And it kind of, that's what sparked this conversation, is that, this was hands-on defensive tactics. This was 5 hours a day of firearms. This was, emergency medical. And I'm thinking to myself, I haven't seen, and again, like you said, I'm not a preacher. I'm not a preacher at all either. And I don't consider myself a practicing Christian. I'm faithful. I believe in God. I have a personal relationship with God, but I don't practice within the church. So when I saw these 3 people and I talked to them about why they were there and what they were doing, this was really, more than what I would expect a church to do, but it got the wheels turning. And I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, like if they're going to do this and they're being tasked with protecting that group of people the same way that I'm being tasked with protecting a group of people in a grocery store or at a bank, they do need that training. And like you're saying, the importance is training together and doing these things in an environment where you're learning. So, what are your thoughts on the need for a more tactical approach? I know that that's kind of the buzzword right now across the internet. Everything's tactical, but how do you see bringing in a more I don't want to say military mindset, but a more tactical approach to that guardianship than maybe what they were doing before?
I think they're on the path. 3 of them came to the training together, then they all 3 know the same things. They train the same way, and that's the importance of training together. Is now I understand how you're going to respond in a specific situation. It's like, just because you have a carry concealed and I have a carry concealed doesn't make us good shooters. But if we go and we train together at the range, under some sort of professional scope, with a specific task at hand, that then we build confidence in each other. We build some cohesion, and when things go bad, it's going to be organized chaos rather than just chaos.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with Range 54 in Wichita, do you guys have any churches that are utilizing your services?
We have a couple of mega churches that are utilizing us. We have one in our area called Central Christian Church. They probably have about 5,000 members. It's a pretty good sized church, a pretty good sized campus. They do things a little bit different than other churches. They have paid staff. They're part of their staff. Part of their jobs are volunteered as security. So their security are being paid to be there. Most security people in a church in this area is the volunteer position. So when I go to church on Sunday, I volunteer to be security for one of the services that they have. And so those guys are a little bit different, and they have a contract with us. As a matter of fact, they're in the facility right now training on Stop the Bleed.
Nice.
But we do a lot of different types of training. I think when we talked before, I'm not into this, high speed, low drag. If your fundamentals are sound and you can shoot on the move and you can shoot from cover and you're being shot at, that's an active shooter. That's
right.
So we teach specific to a task. One of the tasks that we teach is drawing from concealment, drawing from where you carry, shooting on the move, clearing malfunctions. Those are all separate classes. And the reason we've done that is there are, not to be disrespectful, lots of companies around the country that offer that training. But like you said, when I travel from Wichita, Kansas to wherever that training is, and once I get there, I have to pay for my ammo, which, nowadays is really cheap, right?
It's, oh my gosh. I went shooting on Wednesday, and in the back of my range bag, I had a box of 5.56 that I bought in 2019, 2018. You want to know what the price was on it?
It's probably $11 or $12.
It was $9.99.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's
insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, we've seen it as high as $1 around right now, and it's But again, and some of our training can be just as good as if we do it dry. Magazine changes, clearing malfunctions. We could do that without a stick of ammo and become more proficient. Even your draw stroke, you can smooth out a draw stroke by just practicing dry. So, I'm in here to make money, and I'm giving away all my secrets.
Well, I guess it's so hard for me to really articulate this because, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Kansas City.
Right.
So I get that people there are, there's very little, if any, pushback to what you're talking about. And I think that people are more inclined to understand the social climate that we're living in. But if you can step outside that box a little bit, have you had the opportunity, maybe when you were working in law enforcement or any other aspect of your past careers, have you had to try to sell personal protection? Let's just, even if we take it outside of the church, have you ever been in a position where you had to try and sell personal protection to people, where you had to try and convince them to take their own safety a little bit more serious?
We do it all the time, whether it's here. We do it here daily. What we have here at Range 54 is a retail center as well. We sell guns, we sell training, we sell ammunition, and we do a lot of training. But if you look at the world as a whole, or the United States, pick a state, I know that when I call 911, they're coming. The government is coming, but how long are they going to take to get there? The law here in Kansas allows me to defend myself, and so therefore I choose to train and be able to do that. So in the past, some of my law enforcement responsibilities, if we had a tornado roll through this area and wipe out neighborhoods and big stretches of area, 911's taxed. They only have so many people out, and they can only call so many people in. And then if we're calling outside resources in, it's going to take a minute for them to get there. And who's taking care of you until they get there? It didn't take me long after doing a little search and rescue one time and digging people out of basements that in my basement, I have a hatchet that I can start chopping my way out so I don't have to be there until somebody comes and gets me. So it's the same principle with defending yourself. You have to be able to defend yourself. Law enforcement, unfortunately, are reactionary. They get the call, they go to the call. Very seldom are they on the scene when it happens. And over my career, I can only think of a half a dozen times, a dozen times where you just happen to be in the wrong place at the right time or the right place at the wrong time. You decide.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a way that you have found to get across this message to people without heightening the anxiety? And what I mean by that is, like, people already right now are so stressed out and people are so scared. I think that a lot of people, maybe what lends itself to the unwillingness to be proactive in terms of preparedness is that people are afraid. And the more you look into what you need to do to protect yourself and what you need to learn and how to go about getting training, it's almost like this never ending Pandora's box. And it's like, well, I know about firearms, but now I need to figure out what type of ammunition. And okay, now I know about ammunition, and now I realize that this type of ammunition does this and this does this. And it's like the more you're made aware of these things, it can kind of raise that anxiety level. How have you been able to, either within the church or just in general, be able to address this need for preparedness without also kind of turning up that dial and making people more anxious or more afraid of the situation that they're already in?
And until we started talking about that, I never gave it any thought because my background experience has always been, being trained. And I think you find a level of comfort in your training. I mean, when you went to that sheepdog response class, you didn't sound like you were very comfortable about rolling with people bigger than you or smaller than you and getting in uncomfortable situations or whatever it was. But you come back with a wealth of knowledge,
Yeah.
and I think that you probably feel a little bit more comfortable putting hands on somebody and things that you can do to stay ahead of the game. And, a gun is not an end all be all cure. Part of what we teach is also de-escalation techniques. We want people to be able to talk things down. I'd rather talk to somebody than shoot somebody, honestly,
Absolutely.
because once you're involved in a shooting, it changes your whole life, your whole outlook on life. And, if you get it wrong, then you're spending the rest of your life in prison, and that's not good either. Colonel Cooper has modes of awareness. We try to teach people to be aware. If you're carrying a gun, you ought to be running in that yellow to orange range, all the time, because, the last thing I want to happen is somebody take my gun away from me and use it on somebody else. If they take it over, use it on me because I wasn't prepared, then that's on me. But the reality is that we have to start looking at the government can't take care of us. We need to be able to step up and take care of ourselves, at least for a short period of time. And what I was saying earlier about you going to that training is you went by yourself. Your other teammates didn't go, and the thing we see without training together is you grab an arm and I grab an arm and I'm taking him one way and you're taking him the other way, and it's not working out too well.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, within the security field and in terms of the realm that I work in, and there's a broad spectrum, but in the realm of security, that entry level security that I'm in, there's not a focus on training in general. And there's definitely not a focus within each company on working together as a unit. I found something interesting the other day. I was working at a location downtown at a bank, and I saw a guy wearing my same company uniform walking past the door. And I kind of poked my head out and I said, "Hey, where are you working today?" And he points across the street at a retail location. And I thought to myself, here in Portland, you have a large number of unarmed guards that work for different companies that are kind of patrolling that downtown area. Very few of the businesses have armed guards. So within 100, maybe 150 yards, my location, I'm an armed guard, and then his location, he's an armed guard. And I thought to myself, if there was an active shooter situation in either one of our locations, would that other person who works for the same company that I do, would they be aware? Would they know? Would they be able to, either respond or send help or anything? But the fact that I'm having this conversation just proves that discussion has never been had, that training has never been talked about or implemented. And I thought, what a horrible situation for either one of us to be involved in potentially an active shooter situation. We know that the police response here in Portland is going to be 30 minutes or longer, and we're within 150 yards of each other and didn't even know that we were there. And so my ultimate goal, if I could wave a wand and make this a perfect society, I would at least within individual companies, security companies, have a better mode of communication and have better lines of training across. Hey, you four guys are working in this one area of the city. You need to be aware of where each other are, what your needs are, so on and so forth. But, I just don't see that at all. And I don't know if it's a financial issue or if it's just a lack of maybe wanting to open up certain levels of liability. I don't know. But that's something that's so needed right now, specifically in a city like Portland, where security is being tasked with doing so much more than normal.
Right. If we're going to wave wands, let's wave a wand and change society to where we don't need us,
Yeah, just fix the original problem, right?
Yeah, the reality is it's not there. So the only wand that we're going to wave is our own ability to go out and seek out training. And, again, I applaud you for what you've done. I mean, you move from, a city that liked you to a city that doesn't like you, and you're having to do a job that I don't know. I don't want to overstep my bounds, but may not be, respected or may not be, I don't know. I think it's a tough position. I know when I was in security, when I first got out of the Marine Corps, that law enforcement looked down on us, that, you didn't have this, you didn't have that. The reality was I was still looking for a law enforcement job. I never stopped until I got it. And so, you guys, it's tough. It's tough. And I think the reason, this is not trying to be disrespectful, but I think the reason that training is training that is not offered is oftentimes companies are more about making money. They charge a contract fee, and then they trim the crap out of it to pay you guys, and the rest goes in their pockets, and I could be wrong, but that's kind of the way it seems to me from an outsider looking in. And if they could take some of that out of their pockets and spend it on a group of guys that are working, or at least, when we get in a fight, we're going to be fighting the same way. We're not fighting each other. We're doing those things. One of the things that we've done here is try to make training affordable. And I know, again, people go lots of different places, pay a lot of money to get training, but here we are doing a 2-hour class that's specific to a task like drawing from concealment or clearing malfunctions or something like that. We're charging $50 for a 2-hour class to encourage people to come in and train more often, formalize training more often. Because if I go to a $900 class, first of all, we've got to get that past the wife, and then, how often is she going to let me go? Because it's a $900 class plus the ammo, plus the transportation, plus the room and board and the meals while I'm there. You're talking about a couple grand, and then how often do you train? And, once a year or once in a lifetime isn't enough training. Damien, what'd you do in the Army?
Well, actually, I was in the Air Force, and I actually graduated from high school, so I got to move up a tier. I worked on the B-2 stealth bomber. I was stationed right there at Whiteman Air Force Base, which is down the road from you guys. I did flight controls, hydraulics, and weapons loading. So a little bit of everything there on the flight line. And, I've told this story a lot. I was in the military in a really transitional time. When I came in, this was post-Vietnam, post-Desert Storm, and everything was pretty much quiet. From 96 to 98, I spent all of my time bringing that B-2 stealth bomber program online. We did a lot of air shows. I got to go TDY, pretty much all across the country and have really nice dinners with dignitaries and senators and people that were responsible for getting this $2 billion a piece plane brought online. And I was like, man, I could do this for the rest of my life. 98, we went into Kosovo, and that was the first time that we had utilized the B-2 stealth bomber in combat. And so that was kind of the shift where things were starting to change, and we were now splitting our squadrons into two. It was a lot less pomp and circumstance, and it was getting dirty, and we were starting to be utilized more and working a little bit harder. And then I got out in 2000. I had signed up for a 4-year commitment. I get out in 2000 and kind of had that little understanding of that clause that you have a 2-year inactive reserve. And then September 11th happened in 2001. I had already moved to Kansas City. I had already purchased a house. We had just had my daughter, and I was terrified because we went from a support system where we were launching the B-2 from Whiteman Air Force Base and doing support missions in Kosovo to where they literally forwarded the B-2 program, half of it, over to Guam. And, they were sending airmen over to the sandbox. And I was terrified that I was going to be put, back into the military on a recall and be forced to go back overseas. So I was in there at this pivotal time where everything transitioned from everyone being separated and you kind of doing your own little thing to where you had a more encompassing military where now everyone's working together. People that stayed in the military in my unit that did 20 years that are just now coming out, those guys ended up grabbing guns and kicking doors in, at the height of the Afghanistan campaign. So, the military really evolved and everybody got their hands dirty. So it was interesting. I'm happy with my decision on one hand, but I actually wish I could have been in a little bit longer to have learned some of that stuff that now I'm paying for on the back end to learn now.
Here's my point, though, is that were you good at what you did?
I'm sorry?
Were you good at what you did?
I think I was. Yeah.
So how did you get? You trained, right?
I trained and I listened to people that were older than I was that had a lot more experience.
So that's my point is the military people are good at what they do because they train. Firefighters, police officers, train. So when something happens, they're not thinking about it because when you're thinking about it, you're frozen. Your mind is trying to catch up to where you're at. What's going on. This isn't supposed to be happening now. And so you roll into it automatically and you handle whatever needs to be done, whether it's working on a plane or whatever it was that you did it because you had a lot of training. Most citizens are good at what they do because they work at it. So that's the important thing is people have to understand carrying a gun, again, is not an end all be all cure all. It's a tool. And we have to have skills with that tool. And the only way we get those skills is through training.
Absolutely. Well, before I let you go here, let's talk about that in relation to the security guards that are watching this. Most of the people that are watching this are nowhere near Wichita, Kansas. We're sure that you have a amazing business and that you do a great job in terms of training the people that seek out your information and your knowledge. But for those security guards that we're speaking to right now, their companies aren't providing training. They're wanting more. They're aware of the situations that they might be facing. What's your 3 things that a security guard can do right now to help them be better at what they're doing, but also be more protected in their everyday life?
Develop a winning mindset. That would be number 1. Don't do it if your mind's not wrapped around doing it. I mean, you guys are stuck in a situation that's very difficult. So, wrap your mind around what you're doing. You have the right mindset. Just keep it up. Don't get discouraged. Keep heading the direction that you're going. I would say, do what you did, and that's seek out training. There's got to be other people like us that believe in training and aren't charging an arm and a leg for it. I was a cop. I know not having money is a terrible thing. My whole life was rubbing nickels together to try and make a dime. We're working hard to try and make ends meet for the family. You're not going to get rich in law enforcement. It just isn't going to happen. It's probably the same in security. So but if there's some training around, seek it out. Or maybe you have a buddy that was in the Army that was a defensive tactics instructor or something like that. Get with them. One of the guys I learned a lot from on our agency was a Army Ranger, and he jumped into Panama, had a lot of experience. So I went to him and started asking questions. And those guys that have been around and done stuff, they're more than willing to help you out. It's like those guys that you went to training with. they're more than willing to help you out. And the third thing I would say is, and I kind of covered it in this first one, is don't get discouraged.
Absolutely.
I think that you spend more time in your life working than anything else you'll ever do. So you might as well find something that you enjoy. And I'll tell you, sir, that you have a heart for it. I don't think you'll ever leave it, but keep doing what you're doing.
No, I love it. And, I think that finding joy in what you're doing with your work is so important. And like you said, you spend so much time working, you have to enjoy it. And that's why we're doing this. The topic is a little bleak, and the situation surrounding everything that's going on right now in the world is a little bit, saddening and disheartening. But, I'm sure that when you go to work at the range and you're working with people and you're training people and you're helping people, I'm sure you're having a great time. Shooting guns in that training aspect is so much fun. So I'm sure that you really enjoy it. And I enjoy what I do with security, and I want people to feel that this is a viable option for a career, because if you just think outside the box and you get a little bit more out of it, it really can be something that's fulfilling. So, Ken, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today, for coming on a Saturday. I'm sure you have a lot of things going on. So I really appreciate it, sir.
I'm just working. We had a low light class this morning, and we have like I said, a first aid class going on now. We have a lot of things going on, and we're just trying to do our little piece in our little piece of the world.
Hey, do you have a website or any socials where people can find you guys if they're looking for information or training or anything?
Absolutely. Range54.com is our website. It's really easy. Range 54 is a range on 54 highway in Kansas. I mean, we're simple people. We do simple things,
There you go.
And then we have a Facebook page, and you can, we have a Facebook community, so you're welcome to follow us there. We have a lot of good stuff going on. Again, people probably from that far away won't come this way. We do have contracts with some pretty big name security companies in our area, and we do a lot of training for a lot of different people. We have some federal contracts. We do some work with the federal government. We're just doing our little thing and our little slice of the pie.
Outstanding. All right. Well, Ken, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again. Okay.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Be safe out there, my friend.
You're so welcome. Thanks a lot. All right, guys, listen, if we're getting anything out of this, and the theme of what we're talking about on this channel, it doesn't change, guys. It's all about training. It's all about putting yourself in a better position for you to be safe, for you to be more professional, and at the end of the day, for you to make more money for yourself and for your families. And the only way that we can do that is we have to change the narrative around security. So guys, find training. Okay. There's training online. There are tons of classes out there, whether it's active shooter training, self-defense tactics, firearms, whatever it is, guys, just get out there and get this training. There's some more on this subject that I want to talk about, but I'm not going to do that on YouTube. I have something in the works in the next couple of weeks that I'll be talking to you guys about, because we need to have a funnel where we can have some really honest conversations. I'm not quite sure that YouTube is a place to do that, but we'll talk about that more in an upcoming episode. As always, if you're getting any benefit from the videos that we're uploading, please like, share, and subscribe. As always, watch your six and be great. Take care.